So welcome everyone. Want to welcome you to the Lauber Business Partners webinar entitled Why a Fractional CFO May Be the Best Financial Decision You Make. I am Mark Wiesman, and my wife Julie Tolan and I are the co-owners of Lauber Business Partners. Lauber Business Partners is a firm headquartered in Milwaukee that provides financial and accounting, human resources, talent search, coaching, and planning services to small and mid-sized organizations. We really work with our clients in three different ways. One is part-time, or what we call fractionally, and that could be a day a week. It could be 2 days a month. It could be a little more than a day a week. So it just kind of is tailored toward our client. And we also work with them on an interim basis. A lot of times when someone leaves an organization, we're able to kind of backfill until they find a new person. And then we also do just project-based consulting. So scope out a need and then work on that with the client, and obviously once that's done, we will leave. But so in addition to Lauber Business Partners, we also have a not-for-profit division called Lauber Community Partners, and my wife Julie runs that. Provides kind of similar services to Lauber Business Partners, but really geared toward the not-for-profit sector. We have over 70 professionals working across our various service lines. So what we're here to talk about today, though, is our Fractional CFO service. We've been providing these services since 1986, and we've got about 35 professionals working in our financial services practice, and we've served somewhere around 800 clients over time with our services. So this program is really to talk about our Fractional CFO service and create an awareness of what is a Fractional CFO concept and also what is it not. We would like to provide insights that when it might be appropriate to actually engage a fractional CFO and help understand kind of how the whole concept works and what one might expect if they were engaging a fractional CFO. And would also hopefully along the way here be able to provide a little bit of input in terms of, hey, what does good look like in terms of financial management practices in small to mid-sized organizations. And lastly, we'd love to answer any questions that you might have about fractional CFO services. To that end, there is a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen that if you have a question, you can click into that and post your question, and we'll try and get to that during our session today. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to our panelists. We've got a great panel today. We've got three people. We have one fractional CFO client of ours, Hanson Dodge. And then we have two of our CFOs, one of which is Lynn Robinson, who actually has served Hanson Dodge. I'll just take a second to introduce the panelists. Stacy Boney is the president of Hanson Dodge, and Hanson Dodge is a full-service, deeply digital advertising and branding agencies that believes both courage and kindness have a place in business. Stacy joined Hanson Dodge in 2016 and became the president in 2018. She's passionate about harnessing the collective talent at Hanson Dodge and driving excellent outcomes for their clients. Prior to Hanson Dodge, she spent 32 years at BBDO, another large agency, and she led the teams there doing transformative work with some pretty big name clients, William Wrigley Jr. Company, for example, Sara Lee Henkel, SC Johnson. Notable successes include launching and scaling brands such as Wrigley's Winter Fresh, Eclipse, and Orbit. We've probably all seen those in the grocery store. Expanding the Henkel Dial portfolio into adjacent categories and revitalizing the Ziploc and Raid brands. So she has tremendous experience working with large brands. At Hanson Dodge, she's increased the rigor and discipline and driven full integration of agency services, leading to a scaled and enduring client success and partnerships. So Stacy, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Lynn Robinson has been a Lauber CFO since 2017, and Lynn is a seasoned senior executive with a CPA and MBA, providing small and mid-sized organizations with hands-on experience in strategic, operational, and financial responsibilities. In addition to her experience as a CFO, CEO, and president, her industry experience includes public accounting, manufacturing, leasing, corporate finance, investment banking, and she has a proven track record in leading cross-functional teams to achieve business objectives. So Lynn, thank you for joining us as well.
For inviting me.
And John Tasensky John has actually worked with Lauber in various capacities since 2004, one of our more experienced, longest joining CFOs at Lauber. And John has a proven financial executive with demonstrated top-level financial skills. He has experience in various high-growth environments, really covering all phases of financial management. John's worked in public accounting, various privately held companies, also public companies. He's got private equity backed companies that he's worked with, also has been a partner in a private equity company. So John has tremendous experience really across the whole financial sector, as well as being an owner in a number of his businesses as well. So John, thank you also for joining us.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
For our panelists, I'm going to be asking questions of each of you. And if you hear a question that wasn't necessarily directed at you, but you have something else to add, please definitely jump in and add to the conversation. You want it to be kind of a free-flowing conversation. So we will kick this off. Stacy, we'll start with you if we could. So can you tell us a little about how you decided to engage a fractional CFO and kind of what that experience was like for you?
Yes, and it happened over the dinner table.
Good.
Started over the dinner table. So my husband is a Vistage chair, so he coaches small business owners. And I was new to Hanson Dodge, and I had never imagined that there was no CFO. So after a couple of weeks, I had, where's the CFO? And I had learned that there wasn't one. There was someone doing accounting, and she had been long tenured, was doing a nice job. And anything that was remotely CFO-like was actually being done by one of the owner founders, whose background was much more of an artistic bent than it was a financial one. So that's how they had gotten along. And I was talking to my husband over dinner one night saying, this seems like a problem. There's not reliable reporting. There's not a level of sophistication. And I said, but I understand with the scale of the company, that's not been a priority. And he said, well, there's this thing called fractional CFOs, and there's this company called Lauber. So that's literally how it started. And he introduced me to someone who used to be with you. I think they're now full-time at a company. And I spoke with him, and this whole idea of fractional, it's even a funny term, no longer funny to me, but when I say it out loud around here at the agency, people are like, what do you mean someone's a fraction? But it's getting the quality of a CFO, but getting a fraction of their time so that you don't have to, to bear the expense at your size of a full-time person, but you get all that value. So that's how the journey began. And Lauber was kind enough to really talk to me about our needs and even our MO and style. We're in the ad business, right? Very creative industry. And we talked to a couple different folks. They had me meet a couple different folks, and the right fit was Lynn, who's here with us today. So awesome. That's three plus years ago.
Well, thank you to your husband, first of all. That's great. So what was it about, being at Hanson Dodge, and what was it that was making you feel like, hey, you needed something more than what you had?
The one thing, I came from a large company, large global network, lots of resources at the center in our New York office, and then also those CFOs in each of our offices. I was at the Chicago office. So I was always used to that person being, boots on the ground and very accessible for all sorts of needs. I was also very used to very rigorous reporting, disciplined, timely, accurate reporting so that you could see where the business was going. And I could see when I came in that the company was having to rely on unreliable data from a home-built system of trying to feed, data from HubSpot into other systems and trying to put out a report. But I could see the variability week to week was so great. It's like the numbers cannot be moving in this way. I think there's something wrong with the system we're using, or maybe with the talent that we had at the time. So that was the first thing, because you can't guide your business if you don't have reliable data. And over time, Lynn has worked, we've all sorts of regular reporting. It's simple and elegant when it's done, right? It's hard to get to, simple and elegant when it's done. And so we really, my leadership team and I really always know where our numbers are and what our projections are looking like based on the pipeline of business that we're pursuing.
That's awesome. Lynn, can you talk a little bit about, so when you first came to Hanson Dodge, how did you get started? You know, when you're starting an engagement in general, how do you get going with a client, and what sorts of things were you seeing, and how did you get going, and talk a little bit about the work that you did while you were there?
So the starting point for me is always try to figure out what already exists. So, you know, what kind of reports are they working? Aren't they working? What kind of people are involved? Are they working? Aren't they working? And then looking for how those pieces fit together. And as Stacy said, the regularity and the information being consistent. And everybody knows accountants really like consistency, so that's a good thing, right? So going through, and in the case of Hanson Dodge, what was really nice is I had the time to do it. A lot of times people will, you know, like want you to do 40 hours of work in 4 hours. And so getting a good handle on what already existed, what information was good, what information wasn't good, where the lumps were in terms of the information. And we spent a lot of time, and Stacy was very proactive in helping get the basic data to be consistent and to be able to be flow through the reports without a lot of extra work. And what I mean by that is every week the underlying information that comes from all other parts of the company end up being correct. And so when we pull it in, we already know that it's good, and then we can massage it the way we need to and push it out the other end. Also understanding the business. So even though accounting looks very much the same no matter what, understanding what drives the business and what the non-financial information that was going on in the business, to make sure that it all fit together, that it was consistent. And if they're using non-financial information, that also is and that would be things like new clients coming in. They don't become financial until we start billing or something like that, but having that pipeline, understanding what's coming in, and then identifying gaps and inconsistencies to plug any issues that you have, and work toward process improvement on that.
One thing I'll add is when Lynn came in some ways, I knew what success would look like, but I didn't know what was, running underneath the surface there. And Lynn came in and asked questions that helped us get to some things we didn't know what we didn't know, kind of thing. And also was able to quickly assess some recommendations, things we could change right away, while knowing that over time we would get to something, even better. So we got some early wins when Lynn came in, which was great. And we did start, it's worth noting, we started at 3 days a week, which because there was some heavy lifting to do. And over time, we've tapered down to 1 day a week. That's where we are right now.
Awesome. So it sounds like, when you first started, there was, some obvious financial things that needed to be corrected, not getting accurate financial information to run the business. So kind of where did it go from there? I know there was a lot of other things that you guys got into after you had nailed down the basics. What other kinds of things did you guys work on?
Well, we've during the fun times of the last 2 years, we did a lot of cash flow planning before PP was announced. And then as PP came in, and what was, what we were able to get out of PPP, and then the cash flow related to, just making all of that work, as well as getting the data that was needed to make that happen. additional planning and budgeting to understand what it takes to get from where we are to where we want to be. We're in a growth mode right now, so that's what's going on right now. We're working on pinning those things down. A lot of mentoring of accounting staff as well. We have a good, solid person in there. And the mentoring was broader, in my opinion, than just the financial side. She was very young and really needed to have some professionalism brought into how she approached things. And so I think the mentoring was a good part of things. I think it brought her up to speed faster, working to identify risks and exposures. And I think I'm not always good at translating accountant speak into English, but I really try.
The other thing we did in raising talent was a big part of that. That's been really of great value. That person has grown a ton and is making a big contribution. Other thing is we put in a system called Maven Link that's helping us connect up our data and get, again, more reliable, actionable data that feeds together and made things more automated, less labor intensive, and therefore also prone to mistakes. So a big onboarding of that. And then also we did some valuation work. Is it VRC plan that you brought in? Is it?
Yeah. Valuation research, yeah.
Which it was really important work. And obviously all the inputs had to be coming from Lynn's area, and I had to feel confident that they were getting all the right historical information.
And the valuation, was there ownership transition happening, or what was the reason for that?
We had, there were two partners that founded the company, and then one was bought out by the other, but there was some work that had been done that wasn't fully completed and maybe wasn't done by folks with as much expertise. And there was a desire to kind of get to a benchmark, just moving forward into this next chapter.
Okay. Interesting. Well, good. So it's been what, 3 years now, you said, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Just a little over 3. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. John, a question for you. So, you've been involved in a lot of actually, full-time CFO things, but also fractional CFO engagements. What are the signs that are kind of, markers that, hey, maybe a company could use a fractional CFO? What sorts of things might be call it red flags or indications that they could use a fractional CFO?
Yeah. Well, most of my clients I've worked with over the years, I've been I've been lucky in most respects because I've been working with small growing businesses. And so those businesses kind of get to a point where their available resources are tapped out. And people get kind of the fray on the situation is one of information may be coming late, it may be inaccurate. The closing process is taking a little bit longer, and also I've had situations where, with a lot of small businesses, especially if the owner's been involved for a long time, they have kind of in their gut, they know where they should be and what the numbers should look like, and actuals are off of that. So something is telling them that it's not right, and how do we kind of fix this or look at getting this thing back on track? And so in that situation, I see systems may be strained, people may be strained, and as I said, the resources are just at their max, especially on the financial side.
Yeah, it seems like in Hanson Dodge case, the kind of unreliability of financial data is an obvious one. Other things, sometimes people are we get involved in a lot of situations where things aren't going well for the business, and they really need someone to help them think through. So sometimes we also see that they've got financial problems, and so they need some help on that. we like to get involved, certainly in the ones that you're talking about, John, where they're really growing and have a bright future ahead of them. Although sometimes that isn't always the case. But
Yeah.
So, Lynn, what about you? Do you have any other what you would consider to be kind of indicators that people might need fractional CFO?
I think that in general, it's a cost benefit analysis, right? You need a certain level of expertise and you need to obtain it at a cost that fits with what the benefit's going to be. So a lot of times in a small company, there isn't that much, if they've got good, like a really good bookkeeper or whatever, there's not a ton of stuff that needs to be done at that higher level, but there is stuff that needs to be done at that higher level. And so having that fractional person in there is what takes, what provides that oversight to what's going on in the business. And I think in a lot of small businesses, they look and they say, well, first of all, they don't understand what a CFO or even what the accounting department does a lot of times. And so they need to be trained kind of to know what that looks like, but then also to recognize what they don't, as Stacy said earlier, to know what they don't know. And that's where the CFO helps, or the fractional CFO helps, is helping. I always tease that I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of really good questions. And so, asking a lot of questions and helping the small business understand their financials. And I think what John said is interesting, because a lot of times, especially in a first generation and sometimes even in a second, there is that gut feel of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But they can't necessarily pin down why it's off or what's going on. And again, I think that's a good point. That's a good place for a fractional CFO.
Yeah. So, you both talked about some of the flags of things that might indicate they need a CFO. So what other types of things are you guys doing with clients, kind of just on a day-to-day basis? If you're trying to describe to somebody, okay, here's what I do as a fractional CFO. Maybe John, maybe you can take a crack at that, and then Lynn, you can add in if you have other comments as well.
Yeah. I'll get into what I'm doing right now towards the end, but I think there's a few things, again, for that owner to give him or her some comfort that we'll get things under control, things will be all right. And you start out, and I always kid that I'm a consultant and I'm here to help you. And people look at you and right away they kind of say, what? But I think with that owner, getting to know them, getting to understand what is very sensitive to them, and then helping them out to kind of get them back on both feet and on solid ground is helpful. So one of the areas, and again, dealing with small companies, I take an approach that if there is a key area in the financial portion of the business that would go down, let's say either in an absence or in an emergency, I could pitch in. Obviously, that's not ideal, but it gives the company and that owner some safety net. Second, I like to understand what the business system is, how it's operating, what their financial reporting is, and obviously take hopefully see an opportunity to prove on that. And in a lot of cases, I've been working with a lot of manufacturers. So in a lot of cases, it's working with, let's say, the VP of Ops or the plant manager or the operations manager to provide them with information that they can use. They haven't seen before. They'd like to have it, but we don't know how to get it. And so, it's those three areas: giving that owner comfort, taking care of any emergencies, and then giving some of the other members of the organization some information they may not have seen or had before.
Lynn, additional commentary on that?
I think there's, especially in a small company, there's a lot more ops involvement than you would think. So things like machine downtime or rework or those kinds of things, you start to give them information that helps them understand what's going on in their business from that standpoint. They don't always, there aren't always means of getting that information. So sometimes it's about establishing how to get that information and helping ops with things. And CFO a lot of times also covers HR, IT, accounting, and there's another one that I'm not thinking of. So it's a broad-based thing where you can provide that safety net, as John mentioned, to, kind of, again, ask good questions because you've seen these things in a lot of areas. So if the HR system isn't talking to the payroll system or those kinds of things, they're more ops related, but they make the job of the accountant harder, but they also could lead to inconsistencies in data, just different things like that. So there's a lot of, my experience is that I've also had a lot of ops type of input.
Yeah. And just adding to that, Mark, as you know, right now I have two current assignments. Both of them fall in the category of helping the owner prepare the company for a sale.
Yeah, we certainly see a fair amount of that. And what kinds of things would you do to help them do that, John?
Well, it may not be what some of us know as a full book, preparing a full book, but certainly just having raw financial data, there has to be more than that to having the financial information presented accurately, obviously, but also with putting the company's best foot forward. And a lot of buyers may not, they'll see the as I say, the raw financial statements, but they want to dig much deeper than that. And so there is a fair amount of information that in one of the clients' situation, I just have ready, because believe me, sometime, somewhere, someone's going to ask for it and you'll have it. And as you know, once that process starts, it takes on a momentum all of itself. So being prepared and having the information ready for that potential buyer is always helpful. So a lot of information that just isn't necessarily compiled the way buyers want to see it. So
yeah. So you're working on a couple, John, that may turn into transactions. We have done several of them in the last year where we actually did prepare the book for the client. We might be working with an investment banker, but we're really helping provide a lot of the information to the investment bank. And obviously, when there's questions coming back from the buyers, a lot of times we get pulled in helping answer those as well.
correct.
Lynn, what about? Do you work with any? So you talked a lot about working with the internal people, obviously the CEO or president and other executives and even ops people. What about third parties? Do you get engaged with third parties related to the business at times?
And actually, I was going to tag in off of something John said on the best foot forward. Helping the client present that to the bank. A lot of times clients, when they tell their story, it's not as fluid as the bank wants to see it, and not, you want the numbers to support it, but you also have to have that prospective story that goes with the numbers. So, going to the bank, also making sure that you have a bank. The bank mergers, especially of small banks that have been very supportive into larger banks, put some risk on the table. And over the years, I have seen things like, we're just not doing construction anymore. And so kind of, again, as John said, be ready for some of these things that pop out, unexpectedly, but be prepared so that you can have good information, be ready to take that to the outside, like to the bank. Also have worked with IT services to, get IT support managed, and payroll services or HR type services. I like a fully integrated, if you can get it, so that the employee is doing more of the work and less of it happens at the company. Mostly because of less errors. You don't end up with, I changed my 401k 3 months ago and nobody caught it kind of stuff. So those are the kinds of things in evaluating how those people interact. Stacy mentioned VRC, and knowing a number of valuation people in the area and who was good at the type of thing, and getting an array of people to talk to for that was one of the areas.
Excellent. Yeah, I think what we do try to maintain a lot of relationships with banks and other third parties that as clients have needs, so that we have other relationships if they need them, legal even sometimes. And insurance too is another one that sometimes it falls into HR, sometimes it's in finance, depending on the organization or it's shared. But yeah, so there's a lot of areas it seems like that we get involved. So kind of going back to you, Stacy. So having engaged with a fractional CFO as a president, so from your perspective, what are the characteristics you feel that make a good part-time CFO or fractional CFO for you?
Well, one thing right off the bat is long tenure. If someone, often I know a lot of your team is that, and I really value that, because then even if they haven't done advertising, they've seen it all. And I find with Lynn that there's always something that she can point to and say, oh, I've been to this movie before. That's my language. She doesn't talk like that, but you know what I mean? I've seen this before, and there's always a comfort in that. And also with experience can also come speed. So the idea, we don't dither. One of the things that was not working before Lynn got here was that the team was working these crazy hours, and yet we didn't have what we needed from them. So it just felt like the ocean was being boiled, and yet we weren't coming up with any proceeds from that. So to just cut through it and figure out what work needs to be done, what work doesn't need to be done. And so that experience level comes into play there too. And then, someone who can keep confidences, which anyone who makes it to a senior level and makes it to CFO is, grown up doing that. And there is, that expression, it's lonely at the top. I totally disagree with that. I don't think it's lonely at all. I have an amazing leadership team, and I rely on them. They rely on me, and we're very transparent. And none of them are very financially, like I'm the most financially minded of the bunch, and we're a creative industry that shouldn't be their forte. And to have someone that I'm working on the detail with, that I trust, but not have to burden any of them with it. So, and when we had some tenuous moments during the pandemic period, just to know that Lynn and I had it all, we had it all line of sight to it, and we didn't need them to be burdened with any of the detail. And if I were in it alone, I would have needed to pull one, the most financially minded of my crew in on that, and being able to spare them and just let them focus on clients and the work, because I've got Lynn as my partner, very, very valuable.
Great, thank you. It's interesting you say, because you have a somewhat sophisticated management team, I would say, and people that are very talented in your field. It's interesting because some other businesses, I would say, that we have, sometimes they don't have that. And that's where hopefully we can also be the right hand to the CEO or owner that sometimes doesn't have anywhere else to turn to talk about problems, or, hey, where are you going with the business? And, we got people like Lynn and John who have a lot of experience and have owned their own businesses in the past. So it's, I think that is another nice benefit sometimes for people that maybe aren't as fortunate as you are. So kind of going off on your theme a little bit there around experience. So John and Lynn, so you're both have a lot of experiences, and not just financial. I would say you've been business owners, president, you've been part of a private equity firm, John. So tell me how that sort of experience plays out when you're working with your clients. Are you able to use those other experiences you had?
Yes, quite a bit. And I think as Stacy said, this when you in my case, you've had over 20 clients over the years. You see a lot. You see some things that are good, and I make a point to kind of put them in my back. Those areas, whether it's an improvement or something that business is doing very well, I'll put my back pocket and maybe save for my next client, or if I can use it down the road. And then you see a lot of things that you scratch your head and why are they doing this? And it goes across all areas of the business. And the thing with most of the small businesses, people wear a lot of hats. And so if I have the opportunity, let's say if I'm on site the day a week as a fractional CFO, but if I have an opportunity to, let's say, help that person that's trying to make a large purchase, and they're looking at a purchase order and they don't quite understand what this means. Or I've gotten involved in quality audits, helping that quality auditor either look at some information a little bit differently, or I've also been involved quite a bit with automation projects, and not just from calculating a return on investment of the project, but looking at what is it actually going to do, what costs will it save or take out. And most small businesses don't have that expertise. And so it's kind of fun, just getting away from, as I say, the raw financial numbers and helping the business out in those other areas.
Lynn, how about you? Yep, go ahead, John.
I mean, today, just an example, today I was involved. This is probably a little bit more financial, but again, most smalls don't have purchasing departments, but I had to go back to 3 of our largest customers and talk about price increases to all 3 of them. So if I look a little beat up, you know why.
Had a long day, huh?
Yeah,
but it's all good. It's all good.
It's a good example, though, John, that a lot of people think, okay, we're just dealing with financial things, but there's a lot of other areas I think we end up getting involved in. One, because we have some experience there, or they just don't have anyone else to do it, and so
correct.
Because of the experience we have, we can go out and do it. Lynn, how about you in terms of your background and how that plays into how you handle your clients?
It gives me a really 360 type perspective. So everything from, public accounting, running my own business, taking a company public, there's a breadth of stuff there. And I think what John said about taking the good stuff and kind of putting it in your back pocket, you do try to, over time, understand how people made it better. And then, I don't care that I didn't invent it. I'm okay with that.
Right.
Whatever. And the fact that we've been in a lot of different companies. And I think that's something that is unusual in the number of companies we've been in. I've probably been in, I don't even know how many, 30, 40, 50, I don't know. But when I was in corporate finance, I was in doing valuation work for, engineering companies, manufacturing companies, just a gamut of different kinds of businesses. And I think you start to see, the elements that run smoothly across businesses. So you want to make sure your client is doing those things because those are kind of the easy things. And then to John's point, a lot of times, and I agree, Stacy has a very heavy and competent management team. And when you're in the smaller companies, particularly, a couple million, I don't know, under 50 million, say, a lot of times there's the owner and then the shop guy and, maybe one other person, and they're not, a lot of times they're so buried in the day-to-day, they're not looking out for the business. And so our job is to kind of pull them out of that and take them into a broader look.
Yep. Totally agree with all those comments. So Lynn, a question for you. So one of the questions I get often is, how do I know if I should hire a full-time resource, or is a fractional CFO the better route? What's your thinking, and how would you respond to that?
I would say that there's a point in time, and again, we go back to kind of that cost benefit. In the beginning, I worked 2 to 3 days for Hanson Dodge, but that's not a good long-term plan, because at that point, it's probably a good idea to hire a full-time person on the cost side. The other side, though, is when the business starts to grow, so you're all of a sudden getting into a growth, or there's been some changes in management that put some gaps in a couple places, and then maybe you need to go to full-time at that point. Also, if you're, if John's working in really small companies, they're gonna get to a point where they need more than he can do in the hours that he can do it. And he needs to be looking broader. I need to be looking broader. And so you start to think about, well, I don't have, pricing should be looked at, but I don't have time for pricing. Or, we want to reestablish a different banking relationship, and that's going to take extra time. And we're starting to have enough complexity in the organization that, we need to move to this full-time role. But there is in my opinion, a huge need in that smaller area, though, for that part-time person to, if nothing else, help direct where the questions go, so that the person who's running it can start to fill in the blanks, so to speak, start to know what they don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a good point, Lynn. And to that, I've seen in most cases, now not in all of them, but when the company, just from a growth perspective, it gets past 10 million, gets into the 15 range, gets closer to the 20. It seems to be in that area, just in terms of just revenues, transactions, complexity. You could have a very strong, solid controller there. That could work and does work, but it starts at that kind of range, getting close to the 20 million, that, the needs, the financial needs grow, and a CFO is probably going to be the answer to that, those needs. And back to another point of Lynn, I've worked myself out of jobs on fractional assignments. I feel good about that. I mean, the company is in a better position because they needed that full-time CFO, and they have that. They have that now.
I agree with that, and I think one of the benefits of Lauber having people who are interested in fractional CFO work is that we're not holding back. Oh no, we want to still do this, right? We view it and we say, well, this is starting to look like we should do something different. And agreed. I think I feel good about that too, because you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
The company moves on to the next thing.
Yes. And we've definitely come across those situations where it's like, this is clear they need a full-time CFO. We will go to the client and say, listen, I mean, we love the billings, but to do the right thing, you should have a full-time person doing this. It's not efficient financially for us anymore. So we definitely see those. And then of course we offer up to do the search for them, but that's a different topic. But so thank you for those insights. I will also say on the front end, as we're looking at prospects that come in, okay, what do they need? Sometimes it's, where are they in their life cycle as a company in terms of financial expertise? It might be they're really small. They don't even have the basics down yet. So, all right, get yourself a good bookkeeper, get yourself on track here. We can come in and do some of the higher level stuff, but there's also that scale up on the front side where maybe the client is not, they just don't have the basics done. You don't want to be out hiring a high level person full-time to be doing that kind of stuff. So, we definitely see that sometimes too.
I think that's one of the, when you talk about having financial management, the basic thing is, get the stuff in and get it in right. You don't want somebody at this level doing corrections all the time.
Yeah.
It's not a good use of time.
Yeah. And we can, if you've got people that need development, like you said, Lynn, we do a lot of mentoring also. And John, I know you have over time as well, to take the people they do have and try and make them better.
Yep.
Stacy, we'll go back to you for a minute. So two questions, a two-part question, I guess, is, did you have challenges as this came on in terms of, bringing in the part-time CFO? Were there challenges to that? And just overall kind of what would you view as being the benefits you'd say that you've gotten out of the fractional CFO situation?
First, on the challenges, I don't really recall any challenges. I wouldn't call it a challenge. Lynn had to learn our business and learn our people a bit, and these roles, because advertising is something you don't know much about how it works and what the roles are until you're inside of it. So there's a little learning curve, but Lynn, as you work in so many businesses, as people in advertising do, you get good at climbing learning curve and getting it. So Lynn did that. So no, I think if anything we did, Lynn's so good, and there was a time we were getting a little overly reliant, to your point, when you start to get up to the 3-day mark, what's the, right? And are we just having Lynn do things because we trust her so much? Is there someone else who should be doing those that's on staff, and we course corrected that together. So that's a great problem to have. And then your second question was what?
Just in terms of, if you were to characterize the benefits you've gotten out of this relationship, what would you say about that?
Yeah. So, at the base, but it's so fundamental, reliable, predictable financial data, and including forecasting, budgeting, and really we get something called, we went down to every other week, but we were getting it every week until we made it super reliable. But every other week, something called the steering report that lets me see the stuff in the pipeline and the stuff that's closed and out ahead, and really know where we are at all times, which is so valuable. And then you spoke about the relationships. So some of the relationships that Lynn had, and her ability also to manage the relationship with the bank and with the outside accountants, and bringing in a valuation firm, and just always having those resources and those trusted partners that she could introduce us to, and the mentoring of the young person that we talked about, really helping to raise somebody up, and then just overall being my thinking partner, and my confidant when needed as it relates to the financial information, and helping me place bets. Having the confidence if it was time to lean in on something, having the confidence. And sometimes I could tell Lynn was like not sure. Like, I think it'd be okay if you do that, but like, okay, I'm more conservative than you, Stacy. But so far, right, Lynn, it's been okay every time.
But okay, so far, yeah.
Time. So we're a good pair that way. So yeah, the lot of intangibles, and then also the really rigor around the numbers.
Excellent, thank you.
I think a comment I'd like to make there is one of the things Stacy did help with early on was we kept pushing through to say these things have to be accurate, and to refer to the steering report, making sure that the people who knew what the pipeline looked like, that those numbers kept being accurate. And that's that garbage in, garbage out. So to make the steering report work, the input has to be accurate as well. And Stacy was all on board with helping the company understand why those numbers were important, because a lot of times people don't understand what things are being used for, and therefore don't know the value of them. So when we talk about a business owner, again, in managing the financial, it's understanding and helping people understand why those things are important, I think is a lot. It's not only on my side that has to happen, it has to happen on Stacy's side as well.
Right. Lynn, I'll stick with you for one more question here, and that is, so what sort of things should small business owners be thinking about in terms of trying to build a solid financial management practices and system, whether they're using Lauber or not. What sorts of things should they be thinking about as they're building their business, and hopefully finances is growing along with the business?
I think making the basics work to start with, and then having a means of looking in the future that hopefully isn't just throwing a dart at a dartboard, and that's part of when I talked about, the right positioning for the bank, or later on, if you want to sell it, what's the story behind it? So helping the owner really understanding what drives the business, where they're going with it, what's it going to take to get there. I also think they need to understand cash flow. Sometimes they understand all of a sudden real quick, but then it's sometimes too late. So paying attention to cash flow, reserves, that kind of thing. And then making sure they have qualified people in who are supervised, and by people who both can add value to what they're doing, but also understand what they're doing, so they can mentor and bring the company more value.
Yeah, I would agree almost 100% with you, Lynn, regarding the small businesses having the ability and getting into a mindset of looking forward, and not so much in the rearview mirror, but looking forward, and having the tools to be able to do that, forecasting and as including cash forecasting.
Yep, completely agree. John, one more question for you. So as a fractional CFO, how would you describe your responsibility to the business owner or the president, whomever you're working with? What do you view as your key responsibilities?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring that up, because as when you asked me to be part of this, I thought to myself, what's my approach? How do I look at this? And I like to say that I take the approach that if I am the business owner, that's my approach, and just from the perspective of us coming in, whether Lynn, myself, or any of the others, a lot of the business owners, if this is the first time, they don't quite understand what the fractional CFO is going to be all about and what they do. But what they do understand and know is what it's going to cost. And so I like to take the approach that I listen quite a bit in those first meetings to understand the owner's kind of hot buttons, or what they're keen on, assess the workload and the assignment, and then each time I'm there, I look at that value proposition in terms of my time and what it costs that owner, and do I feel when I leave that day that value proposition has been met. And I'll go back after a couple of weeks to ask that owner, how things are going, just to kind of get a temperature, not on a specific financial issue, but me being there. And that's what I've loved about these assignments since day one. That owner, if I'm not doing a good job, it's not like how am I going to get rid of John? Do I have to pay him severance? I'm not on the payroll, but John, this isn't working out. We're going to go a different route. And I like being in that position, because I like trying to work convincing that owner that the best thing that he or she has done is having me on board.
Excellent. Lynn, any other commentary on that one?
I think I agree with John on that. And the other element here is that intangible of trust. And I work to be very straightforward. I work to be very open. I try to find what might hit us, what's our blind spot, those kinds of things, and try to get that to the owner, president, whomever I'm working with. And I think that adds value. It's maybe not as easy to quantify, but having that trust level, or that, I think Stacy said something like confidant, which that sounds like there's secrets, but it's more about being able to have an honest discussion about some points, some decisions that might have to be made, and then what those financial implications are, and helping someone talk through that, or helping someone with that, I think is an intangible that we kind of bring that. And I like John's point too, which is we're easy to get rid of if you don't like us.
Right. Yeah. As we always tell clients, listen, we don't have any minimum or maximum contract length.
But sometimes it's personality, right?
Yeah, it can be. But as long as we're providing value, we'll stay around. And if we're not, you can send us packing. Interestingly, we do a lot of surveying of our clients. And one of the comments that we've been seeing quite a bit of lately is, you guys tell me the truth. And that, that kind of, in my mind, boils it all down to, hey, we trust each other and we're going to tell you what we think. And sometimes you may not like it, but we got to tell you what we think is the truth. So one more question for you, Stacy, and then we'll wrap this up. But as a business owner and president, what guidance would you give people that are smaller to mid-sized businesses that are just struggling with their financials? What guidance would you give them to try and break out of that?
So what I did, I ended up reaching into my old world. So Omnicom is the parent company of BBDO, and there was a CFO in that world who had gone independent. And I just hired her to do a checkup. Just come in and tell me what the heck's going on in here. And then, of course, she was also like, and you're going to need some more help than you have. And then, of course, the dinner happened and the rest is history, right? But the idea of having someone come do a checkup is not a bad idea at all. Or just leaning in and saying, I know I need this very, very seasoned help. There's a way to do it through fractional that's affordable. If you're ever saying to yourself, I don't think I can afford it, you can, because even if you did 1 day a week, it's way more than you have now. And it will pay dividends. I'm not a salesman for level. I'm just telling you it's true.
Well, excellent. Well, we are right at 5 o'clock, so we're going to wrap this up. But I want to thank all of our panelists. Really, really good discussion. Stacy, thank you for sharing your learnings. John and Lynn, thank you for your knowledge and learnings as well. We really appreciate you guys being willing to do this. Also want to extend my thanks to all of the folks in the audience. And so hopefully we gave you a glimpse of, what is a fractional CFO? What do they do? How do you know if you need it? But hopefully demystified this fractional CFO thing a little bit. And should you be dying for a rerun of this program, it will be available on our YouTube channel. So if people missed it but want to see it, that will be available. So if your company or your clients or acquaintances, are interested in learning more about our services, please don't hesitate to contact us. And thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And everybody have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.